The atmosphere throughout the entire week in Toronto had been incredible. It was almost impossible to describe. From Tuesday, the National Bank Open didn't feel like a normal WTA 1000. The stadium was packed every single night. Philippine flags were hanging from the upper deck. Chants were echoing through the concourses hours before the first match, and all of it was for one 21-year-old from Manila. Then at 9:47 p.m. on Sunday night, everything suddenly changed. Belinda Bencic won a single point on center court, and for the first time in 7 days, 12,500 seats seemed to forget how to breathe. The Philippine flag stopped waving. The chants that had been nonstop since Tuesday disappeared into a low hum. And on the baseline, favoring her right ankle, Alex Eala looked up toward a wall of red, white, and blue. She had just lost 6-4, 6-0. But instead of looking toward the scoreboard, she looked toward her people. Then she mouthed a single word: "Thank you." That moment is the reason this entire story matters. Because just 6 days earlier, Alex Eala had been standing on another court celebrating the biggest title of her career. She had won her first WTA title in Washington. She defeated world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final. And the following morning, she woke up ranked number 20 in the world, a career high. Toronto was never supposed to feel like a recovery stop. It was supposed to be the encore. It was her first WTA 1000 as a seeded player, and she entered as the number 25 seed. And then the draw came out, and something happened across the greater Toronto area that the tournament had not fully anticipated. Within hours of the draw becoming public, roughly 3,100 tickets reportedly moved. And this wasn't spread across the whole week. The demand was concentrated around sessions where Alex was scheduled to play. Filipino families from Mississauga, Scarborough, Brampton, they didn't wait to see if she would advance. They bought their seats immediately. They wanted to be there. They wanted to see her. By the time Alex reached a round of 32 match against Katie McNally, the support had become impossible to miss. Philippine flags were hanging from pedestrian bridges outside the venue, inside the 12,500-seat main court. The stadium was packed to the roof. And remember how unusual this was. Alex was only the number 25 seed. She was playing a second-round match, yet the atmosphere looked more like a championship night. That is not something the WTA 1000 circuit regularly sees from a player ranked outside the top 10. But this was Toronto, and Toronto had become Eala territory. Then the controversy began. Ahead of the round of 16 match against Belinda Bencic, reports started circulating online about comments concerning crowd noise and match etiquette. The comments spread fast through Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and Filipino tennis communities. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't only about tennis. It became a debate about crowd behavior. Some commentators accused Filipino supporters of not understanding tennis etiquette. Some Filipino fans even found themselves apologizing online for members of their own community. The atmosphere around the match was already loaded before the first ball was struck. And then the match began, and the sporting record tells a very clear story. Belinda Bencic, the number 12 seed and Tokyo Olympic gold medalist, took the opening set 6-4. Then she took the second set 6-0. It was completely one-sided. Bencic won 57 points across the match compared to 36 for Eala. But here's the context everyone left out. On the other side of the net was a 21-year-old who was playing her 5th match in only 9 days. She was dealing with an ankle that had already caused problems during her 2-hour and 39-minute battle against Katie McNally just 48 hours earlier. Those facts matter, because the story being pushed by some channels was that Bencic simply silenced Eala. But once you look at the timeline, that version becomes hard to defend. Just days earlier, Alex had been preparing for a WTA 500 final in Washington. On Sunday, she was holding the trophy. Her ranking had jumped to number 20. Then she arrived in Toronto. She played a 3-set thriller. She battled through physical problems. She fought through another demanding match against McNally. And by Sunday night, she was facing an Olympic champion with an already compromised ankle for life-changing events in roughly 6 days. And then came the image that spread across social media. After match point, the broadcast cameras showed the stands, and the crowd appeared visibly thinner. Almost immediately, videos started appearing online. The headlines were dramatic. The stadium was empty. Filipino fans walked out. But there was no official tournament data confirming a coordinated walkout. What the footage actually showed was much simpler. When Alex Eala left the court, a noticeable portion of the crowd left with her. And that detail may actually be more significant than the walkout narrative. This wasn't necessarily a protest. It was a demonstration of loyalty. Those fans had come to see Alex. They had bought tickets because Alex was playing. They had filled the stadium because they wanted to support her. And when her tournament ended, many of them had no reason to stay. That is the part mainstream tennis conversations have repeatedly underestimated. For 2 years, people have treated the Filipino support surrounding Alex Eala as a novelty. They assumed it would disappear. They believed the attention would fade once Alex hit a difficult ceiling. Instead, something completely different happened. The rankings eventually caught up to what her supporters had already recognized. They were there before she became top 20. They were there before the WTA title. They were there before the seedings. They were already buying tickets, already filling the bridges, already waving the flags. The tennis world isn't discovering Alex Eala's fan base. Her fan base discovered her first, and now the rest of tennis is finally seeing the evidence. Then came the moment that changed the tone of the entire night. After the loss, Alex stood in front of the sea of Philippine flags. Just 2 nights earlier, during her on-court interview, she had already delivered a line that went viral on TikTok. Someone in the crowd had told her they wanted to be Filipino for a day. That one comment captured what was happening inside the stadium. Alex wasn't simply playing tennis. She was creating an experience. Then, during the press conference on Sunday night, she went even further. Speaking in Tagalog, she thanked the supporters who had remained with her through everything. She spoke about fans staying there despite the rain, despite the heat. They were still there. She didn't complain about the score. She didn't blame the crowd. She didn't make excuses. She thanked her people in her own language on a Canadian WTA 1000 stage. And perhaps the strongest validation of that crowd did not come from a Filipino commentator. It came from a player who had just defeated her. Belinda Bencic is not an ordinary opponent. She is a Tokyo Olympic gold medalist. She is a former top 5 player. She is a returning mother who had just reached another WTA 1000 semifinal. After the match, Bencic was asked about the atmosphere. Her response was revealing. She explained that she didn't really mind the noise, and she compared the experience to what it was like playing against Serena Williams. Think about that. The player who had just defeated Alex compared the crowd in Toronto to the atmosphere surrounding one of the most iconic players in women's tennis history. That tells you just how powerful the atmosphere had become. The Filipino supporters had created an environment that even an elite professional immediately recognized. And suddenly, the entire etiquette debate looked very different. Because the question was no longer whether the fans were passionate. That was obvious. The real question was what tournaments were going to do with that passion. And the number that should have tournament directors paying attention is 3,100. Because 3,100 tickets aren't simply a sentimental statistic. They are a business signal. A number 25 seed in the city, with a massive Filipino diaspora, generated significant ticket demand within hours of the draw being released. That is information tournament organizers cannot ignore. And now Cincinnati is next. Then comes the U.S. Open. Toronto may have been the preview. New York could be something much bigger. The Filipino-American population across the New York tri-state area is enormous. And the U.S. Open takes place in Flushing Meadows, right in the heart of Queens. If Toronto showed what happens when Filipino fans rally around Alex Eala, New York could reveal just how large this movement can become. The WTA now has an interesting decision in front of it. Does the tour embrace loud, passionate, flag-waving, non-traditional fan bases that are claiming space in a sport that has traditionally emphasized quiet etiquette? Or does it attempt to force those supporters into the old model of tennis behavior? Alex Eala has become an important test case, and every tournament from Cincinnati to Melbourne will be watching how this story develops. Because one thing is already clear. The bagel was real. The 6-0 second set is in the record books. But the story did not end there. Less than 24 hours later, Alex was already looking ahead. There was no public apology, no emotional spiral, no attempt to blame anyone. She posted about taking a short break in Toronto before heading to Cincinnati, a 21-year-old giving herself one day to enjoy the city after the most emotional week of her career. In her press conference, She said she understood this could be her final appearance at that Toronto stadium for the year. She thanked the fans. She thanked the Filipino supporters who stayed awake through the night back home. And she made one thing clear. She planned to come back stronger. That mindset matters, because the result against Bencic was painful. But it does not erase what Alex accomplished that week. She arrived in Toronto days after winning her first WTA title. She entered ranked number 20. She carried the pressure of being the number 25 seed. And she walked into a stadium where thousands were waiting specifically to see her. By Sunday, the body simply had less left to give. That doesn't make the scoreline less real. Bencic won. Alex lost. The record will show that. But the record cannot measure the thousands of fans who traveled. It cannot measure the Philippine flags. It cannot measure the chants. And it cannot measure what happened when Alex left the court and a significant part of the audience followed. That is why the Toronto story matters. The crowd wasn't simply watching a tennis tournament. They had attached themselves to Alex's journey. And that connection is becoming one of the most fascinating stories in women's tennis. When an opponent compares your crowd to Serena Williams, people should pay attention. Bencic has experienced the biggest stages in the sport. She knows what a major tennis crowd sounds like, and she recognized the atmosphere surrounding Alex. It wasn't only Filipino fans saying the crowd was special. An elite professional player noticed it too. And now tournament organizers have to ask what this means for the future. Because Alex Eala's appeal is clearly bigger than her current ranking. A player can be ranked number 20 and still struggle to fill a stadium. Alex is doing something different. She is bringing people together. She is giving the community a reason to show up, and she is introducing new fans to women's tennis. For years, professional tennis has searched for ways to reach younger audiences and expand globally. Alex may be demonstrating one answer without even trying. Give people someone they can identify with. Give them someone they can be proud of. Give them a player who represents their community, and they will come. They will buy tickets. They will travel. They will stay up late. They will watch matches. That is exactly what has happened with Alex. The movement started long before Toronto. It grew during her junior career. It exploded in Miami. Then came Washington. She won her first WTA title. She climbed to world number 20, and suddenly, the wider tennis world had to pay attention. Then Toronto showed what that success meant away from the scoreboard. Alex was no longer simply winning matches. She was moving crowds. And now the Eala story continues. From Toronto to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati to New York. The fans will still be there. The flags will still be there. The chants will return. And Alex will return with them.